Klein Falls Axe Attack, an insane camping mystery. Have you ever been camping and felt like you were being watched? Maybe you set up your tent and feel piercing eyes deep in the dark woods of the forest preying on you. In the summer of 1977, two female college students felt exactly that. But it wasn't just their paranoia. The two cyclists decided to partake in a cross-country cycling trip ending in Astoria, Oregon. Terry Gent's and Avra Goldman's trip would abruptly end, and the assailant would never be identified. On June 22nd, 1977, after a long day of cycling in the desert, the two women set up camp in Klein Falls State Park to rest for the night. But a strange feeling overtook the both of them. They felt as if someone was watching them. It was an animal instinct of danger, and we both had it. We both had it separately, and we shared it with one another, Gent said. They brushed it off, assuming it was just paranoia. It was 11 p.m. at night, and the two were exhausted, ready for a good night's rest. Just 30 minutes after they fell asleep, Terry was awakened to realize she was underneath a truck, pinned. She heard a man step out of the truck, walking toward her friend. Avra screams, "Leave us alone!" And then she hears a blow. Then 6 more blows. Terry's heart is pounding. She can't even see the assailant or what is happening. At that point, I knew we were being murdered by a single psycho, Gent says. Next thing she knows, he's over her. I catch a glimpse of a piece of wood. I feel a hunk of cold metal. And then I start losing consciousness, says Gent. She describes the man as meticulously dressed cowboy. Straddling me on each side, I could see the boots, the pant legs, the shirt meticulously tucked into his pants, but his head disappeared in darkness. As the assailant drives the axe down for a final blow to Terry, she catches it in her hands right above her heart. And then he withdrew, got into his truck, and just left. Terry stumbled her way to a highway, flagging down a car in the dead of night. Bill Penhollow and Boo Isaac were teenagers driving down the road when they spotted her. She was so bloody it was dripping off her hair, says Bill. She brought them back to her friend Avra, and suddenly the three see car headlights darting through the woods near them. Then the car turns around and evades. That really got the adrenaline going, because they shined their lights, turned around, and then split and went up the hill, without coming through the park to see what was going on, which was unusual, Penhollow said, and I assumed for sure it was the attacker. Both women were rushed to a nearby hospital in Bend, Oregon, St. Charles Medical Center. Avra underwent a 9-hour brain surgery. Both women survived, but are left with the emotional and physical aftermath of the unknown cowboy. Avra suffered lasting vision problems due to the attack. There was never an arrest for what happened to them up at Klein Falls, and it looks like there wouldn't be any justice in the long run either. Oregon has a 3-year statute of limitations that prevents it. This puts a strict timeline on a patient or their families to file a lawsuit. Based on this, they lost all hope in finding any kind of justice. In 1992, 15 years later, Terry was compelled to figure out more. She returned to Oregon to research. She began looking through police files, returning to the scene, interviewing anyone she could find. She came across a man. His name was Dick Dam. 24 hours after the assault in Klein Falls, a teenage Dick Dam was beating up his then-girlfriend, Jeannie Fish Fraley. He could turn from this really nice, "Yes, ma'am, thank you, ma'am," to Satan in his eyes, said Jeannie. I mean, it was just like two different people, night and day. Jeannie went as far as visiting the scene in Klein Falls when it first occurred. She recalls recognizing Dick's truck tire tracks, and then strangely enough, Dick changes the tires on the front of his truck. It's no surprise that Dick's past involves him beating up women and torturing animals. Sadly, the police did not share the suspicions about Dick Dam, even though many people in town believed he was involved. Was Dick Dam the Axeman from Klein Falls? What do you think? The Circleville Letters. A tangled web of secrets, terror, cover-ups, revenge, and murder. A series of in-depth, terrorizing letters spread across a town like wildfire. Who was the mysterious letter writer? In 1976, in the small town of Circleville, Ohio, creepy letters started making their way into the townspeople's mailboxes. These letters were exposing secrets within this small town and contained personal details of each individual. Was it one person or a group of people sending out these letters? It is still unknown who the Circleville writer is. There was no return address on the marked letters, only that it was from Columbus, Ohio. Perhaps that's a clue? Thousands of letters were received by politicians, leaders, and ordinary folks in town as well. Many of these letters contained sexual-oriented accusations, and some very disturbing. This story starts off with Mary Gillespie, a local school bus driver. She first received a letter in cryptic, handwritten block lettering. The letter writer accused her of a love affair with the superintendent, Gordon Massey.
Stay away from Massey. Don't lie when questioned about knowing him. I know where you live. I've been observing your house, and I know you have children. This is no joke. Please, take it serious. Everyone concerned has been notified and everything will be over soon.
Both denied any involvement together, as they were both married at the time. Mary swore to her husband, Ron, that these allegations were false. 2 weeks had passed, and Ron had received a similar letter stating,
You have had 2 weeks and done nothing. You are a pig offender. You're also a pig. Make her admit the truth and inform the school board. If not, I will broadcast it on CBS. Posters, signs, billboards, until the truth comes out. Only pigs ride motorcycles. Good hunting in your red and white truck on your way to work. Remember, she hung in his office constantly until she broke up his marriage and home. Contact people at school. They're aware. They're starting to laugh, not only at her. Let her read this. It is no lie. He knows I'm telling no lie. I followed him for weeks since last summer, and have seen her meet him several times. He knew if caught, there would be trouble.
if they did not comply, he threatened to release this information to CBS News, post it on billboards and posters all around town. Both Ron and Mary decided to keep these letters and alleged affair quiet and wait it out. For some time, the letters stopped. Perhaps the letter writer was busy with its other targets? The letter writer went as far as posting signs around town accusing Superintendent Gordon Massey of having sexual relations with the Gillespie's 12-year-old daughter. On August 19th, 1977, something dramatic occurred in the Gillespie home. Someone had called the household that day. Ron answered and suddenly left the house in a flurry, angry. It is believed that the phone call was from the letter writer, and Ron left to confront him. Unfortunately, a tragic event occurs. Ron never made it to the letter writer, and he wouldn't make it back home either. For his truck would strike a tree and he would die on the scene. This may seem like an accident, but something seems off. He had his gun on his body at the time of the crash. Police say that his gun was fired at some time before the crash and sometime after leaving his home. Even stranger, the bullet was never found. So who did he fire his gun at? And where did he fire his gun? This death goes to show that this letter writer is capable of murder. Even with the strange inconsistencies of the crash, the sheriff ruled it out as an accident. He had first agreed there was indeed foul play. Then when confronted again, he changed his mind. Many townsfolk believed that this was a cover-up. This seemed to upset the letter writer. He or she wanted the town to know that this wasn't an accident. After her husband's death, the letters continued. Mary had begun a relationship with, you guessed it, Gordon Massey, and decided to be public about it. Things in the town had started changing, but the letters continued, and the letter writer continued to prove what he or she was capable of. On February 7th, 1983, while driving down her bus route, Mary had seen a sign posted to a pole that threatened her daughter's life. As she tore the sign down, she noticed an odd booby trap that contained a loaded gun to fire once the sign was removed. Luckily, the booby trap malfunctioned and Mary was safe. The police linked the gun to Paul Freshour, Mary's brother-in-law. Paul pleaded that the gun was lost years ago and that he was indeed innocent. After a letter writing test, police believed he was in fact the letter writer. Paul was convicted to 7 to 25 years in prison for the attempt of murder of Mary. The story doesn't stop there. Paul received a letter from the Circleville writer while in prison. The letter wrote,
"Now when are you going to believe you aren't getting out of there? I told you 2 years ago. When we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all? No one wants you out. No one. The joke's on you." Tell no one of this letter. Saw the paper. Great news. Great. Sheriff loved it. Do you believe it now? Do you?
This assured Paul that he would never be released from prison. Perhaps he knew the letter writer, and the letter writer threw him under the bus? The most interesting part to this story is that while Paul was in prison, the letters continued. The police even went as far as to admit Paul to solitary confinement for a time and restrict his writing materials to see if the letters would stop. The letters continued on, baffling investigators. The letters continued to pour in, and they were sickening, and they contained some very serious accusations. In one, the writer had accused Roger Klein, the prosecutor in Paul's case, of having gotten a school teacher pregnant and then killing her. The writer went as far as to threaten to dig up the body and mail the remains to police if he didn't admit to it. Another chilling letter called out Dr. Ray Carroll, the local coroner. The writer accused him of being a pedophile, and in fact, he was. The state medical board issued 12 counts of gross immortality, sex crimes involving minors, corruption of a minor, pornography, obscenity, and indecent exposure. Another insane person living in Circleville, Ohio, was David Longberry. He is another possible suspect of being the Circleville letter writer. In 1999, he had raped an 11-year-old girl and was never caught. He is still on the run to this day. In May of 1994, Hall was granted parole and was released after spending 10 years in prison. After his release, he started a website proclaiming his innocence and accusing Sheriff Radcliffe of covering up the crimes. Was Paul an innocent victim of the letter writer, or was he involved somehow? Theories. Some people believe that Mary Gillespie and Gordon Massey were responsible for the Circleville letters, perhaps to kill her husband and be together? Was Sheriff Radcliffe in on it and helped them cover it up? Perhaps they had dirt on him and blackmailed him into helping them? Others believe the letters were written and distributed by a group of individuals in town. One suspect was Ron's sister. One other clue was a mysterious man in a yellow Camaro seen parked by the booby trap sometime before Mary had ripped the sign off. Unfortunately, nothing has been confirmed. Luna Park Ghost Train Fire. On July 9th, 1979, a blazing fire broke out on the ghost train ride at Luna Park in Sydney, Australia. What was once a place for fun and games for family and friends alike, now a horrifying tale that would claim the lives of 7 people, 6 of those being children. The ghost train pictured here was the most popular ride at the amusement park. It's important to note that this was an enclosed ride, taking passengers through dark rooms and corridors, showcasing special effects and creepy displays, all while seated in metal cars on a track. The fire started inside at 10:15 p.m. while 35 people were on the ride. Smoke billowed throughout the ride, filling the rooms, and most patrons made it out alive. Unfortunately, John Godson and his 2 children, Damien and Craig, were later discovered inside the wreckage, as well as 4 Waverly College students, Jonathan Billings, Richard Carroll, Michael Johnson, and Seamus Rahili. The fire completely destroyed the ride. This was partially due to low staffing, along with low water pressure at the park. Because of this low water pressure, firefighters struggled to put out the flames. They even began using water from the harbor to help put an end to the blaze. It took them a full hour to finally put it out. People who made it out alive mentioned smelling kerosene, an accelerant, before the fire started. Many others reported seeing a group of suspicious guys standing outside the ride before it started. After that fateful night, Jenny Godson, the mother of Damien and Craig, had later developed the family photos from their trip. She came across one photo in particular that was chilling. This is the last photo of Damien Godson, taken just hours before his death. They were all standing around when suddenly this man came over to them, wearing a demonic mask, made of cowhide with 2 horns affixed to the top of the head. Holes were cut out for eyes, showing only darkness inside. He randomly came over to Damien and put his hand on his shoulder, saying nothing and doing nothing, almost as if choosing him. They snapped a quick photo before the man would disappear and wouldn't be seen again. Luna Park staff does not know who this man was, and no other witnesses remember seeing him there that day. As Jenny looks at the image, remembering the odd details that led to the tragic deaths of her husband and two sons, she described the photo as an omen, as if it was all meant to be. As their night was coming to a close, they had 4 tickets left and had 1 ride to choose before leaving. They chose the most popular, the ghost train. Jenny had a strange craving for ice cream and asked if the boys wanted any. As she turned around, they had already left to get in line for the ride. When she came back, she was confronted with the grisly scene, waiting to see if her family was okay. The photo of the man bears a similar resemblance to the god demon of child sacrifice, Moloch. Throughout history, the Moloch is portrayed as a bull-headed figure with outstretched hands over a fire where a child would be placed. The word Moloch occurs multiple times in the Bible, and it is interpreted as an evil idol, condemning anyone who interacts with them. It also mentions that Moloch is associated with child sacrifices, even going as far as mentioning children passing over the fire. This could just be a coincidence, but what a terrifying, odd detail in this tragic story. Was this masked man involved somehow in the fire? Or was he the demon god Moloch claiming one of his victims? The ghost train was built in 1931. It was a mostly all wooden ride. The fire was said to have most likely been started by faulty electrical wiring. 18 months before the fire occurred, the staff at Luna Park were advised by the fire department to have proper fire suppression protocols within the park. Another consultant had advised them to also install a fire sprinkler system inside the ride, but they decided not to do either of these things. 42 years pass without any justice, but earlier this year, in 2021, new evidence has emerged that the blaze was a covered-up arson attack. Police are offering $1 million as a reward for any new information about it, even if it doesn't lead to an arrest. A surge of people have been calling, phoning in with tips, information, hoping for justice in this unsolved case. It seems many have spoken and noticed various inconsistencies. This includes the Chief Magistrate, NSW Cabinet Secretary, Police Prosecutor, 7 police officers, 2 investigators, 2 firefighters, and 13 witnesses. Theories. In May 2007, Anne Buckingham did an interview with the Sydney Morning Herald, stating that her uncle, Abe Saffron, was responsible for the fire. Why would Saffron want to do this? Well, because he had tried to buy Luna Park years before and was turned down on this offer. Anne later retracted her statements and demanded they not be published. Wonder why? It's logical to assume she was being threatened or pressured by someone to retract her statements. Years following the ghost train fire, Saffron was linked to 7 separate arson cases. Saffron wasn't just linked to arson cases, but a number of other things. Dealing in stolen goods, prostitution, drug dealing, bribery, extortion, tax evasion, just to name a few. He was known throughout Australia as Mr. Sin. It's speculated that Detective Inspector Doug Knight was involved in the cover-up of the fire. Witnesses revealed that he would cover up evidence by deleting, changing, or manipulating evidence and intimidating witnesses. Many witnesses came forward claiming they were forced to change their original statements and stories. Senior police officials spoke about Abe Saffron being responsible for the fire, and that he hired men to start it and got away with it due to police corruption. This year, ABC made a documentary about this case, investigating it, and they are currently working with the police regarding this. They spent 15 months and $2 million creating the new documentary exposing this crime and tragedy. If you have any information regarding this case, we encourage you to visit the link below to contribute information and findings.